You add and subtract fractions with like denominators the way you add and subtract whole numbers. So when you're looking at a problem, the first thing you want to do is see if you have what we call a like denominator. That means your denominators are the same. So 3/7 and 2/7 both have a denominator of 7. Once you're sure you have like denominators, then all you need to do is add or subtract the numerators, depending on what your problem tells you. So if I look at this, it's an addition problem. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add my numerators. 3 plus 2 gives me 5. My next step is to keep the same denominator, okay? What I'm doing is I'm adding parts of a whole. So I'm adding 3/7 and 2/7. So I'm still going to have sevenths. It's just how many sevenths am I going to have? And what I'm going to have is 5/7. And the very last step I want to do is make sure that it doesn't need to be simplified. I need to look at this fraction and make sure it's in simplest form. And simplest form can also mean that I might need to change it to a mixed number if I get an improper fraction. But in this case, 5/7 is simplest form, so I don't have to do anything with it. Okay, let's look at another one. 7/8 and 5/8. So again, remember your first step, try to figure out if you have like denominators. If you do, step 1 is going to be to add the numerators. 7 plus 5 gives me 12. My next step is to keep the same denominator, which is 8. So 7/8 plus 5/8 gives me 12/8. This brings me down to my third step down here. I need to simplify it and change it to a mixed number if necessary. So 12/8, if I'm going to change this to a mixed number, remember what I do is I divide 12 by 8, and I can see that 12 can be divided by 8 one time with a remainder of 4. So when I go to write this as a mixed number, it went in one whole time, excuse me, one whole time with a remainder of 4, which means I have 1 and 4/8. But look, 1 and 4/8 is not my simplest form. I would have to change 4/8. Both of these have a common factor of 4, which would give me 1 and 1/2. So that is the simplest form for this fraction, 1 and 1/2. Let's try one subtraction problem now. If I look at this, again, first thing I want to check for, do I have a like denominator? And I do. Both of these have denominators of 9. So the steps are kind of the same. Once you have a like denominator, you add or subtract your numerators. This time I have a subtraction problem, so I'm going to subtract my numerators. 5 minus 2 gives me 3. The second step is still the same. Okay, I'm going to keep the same denominator. So the denominator here was 9, which gives me an answer of 3/9. Now again, I have to look at that very last step. Last step is to simplify. So 3/9, if I look at this, both 3 and 9 have a common factor of 3. So I would simplify this down to 1/3. And that's my final answer.